Welcome back to the Chamber's Radio Hour. This is Ed Dwyer of Dwyer Advisory, hosting our show the first Saturday of every month. And so welcome to the stories we've been hearing again today. Two business owners, in this case, two really new businesses that have started up, and in one case in Nocatee and in Ponte Vedra. So it shows business is growing. The Chamber is growing its members. So these are both new companies, right, that started up and right away found that the Chamber really provides a lot of benefits to them, one of which is just the networking, meeting other people. And that's how a couple of the folks that were on the show today were here to be able to tell their story. Meanwhile, though, at the Chamber, you think about, if you look at the website, there's a lot of initiatives that the Chamber obviously is very much involved with. And one topic that is on top of everybody's minds is the affordability of housing in St. Johns County. We all know it's a real issue. We have hospitals coming in. We've got so many businesses coming in, and we're always trying to strike the balance for how people can afford to live in St. Johns County work. Many people, unfortunately, live elsewhere in surrounding counties and drive into St. Johns County. So Beth Tate is with us today, and Beth has been very much involved with the Chamber, as I mentioned earlier, and she is the chair of the Chamber's Public Policy Committee that Scott Maynard and I and Bob Porter and others meet each month. And as I mentioned earlier, Beth is always involved, really watching what's going on at the commissioner's level about this and many other topics. So I'm going to turn it over to Beth to talk about what's the latest on this really tough subject.
Well, thanks for that, Ed. And as you know, we've been working on attainable housing for, almost 3 years now with the Chamber. And we have our Attainable Housing Committee. We had published last year our first report on attainable housing in the county, hoping to get more attention and educate people about the lack of attainable housing here in the county. And we're really excited that after a lot of really hard work by one of our newest Chamber employees, Leah Meyer, we have just released the 2025 version of the Attainable Housing Report. Very excited about that.
Good.
So Aaliyah has just been a super asset to running down a lot of information, and she's been a little bit surprised, I would say, in awe of what she has found. So Aaliyah, what was the most surprising thing you found as you started on this project, learning about attainable housing in St. Johns County?
Honestly, I knew it was an issue, but I didn't know the scale of the issue until I realized that less than 3% of housing is considered affordable here in St. Johns County, and we have less than 10% of our rental units that are affordable here in St. Johns County. And it affects everybody from teachers and nurses to our first responders, and including young professionals such as myself. And unfortunately, a lot of the time, these are the people being priced out of the communities that they serve.
And being a recent college graduate, you've really stepped into the thick of it with that, right? Yes.
Yeah. A lot of the times that people like to say, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but I always say the bootstraps are breaking. And I graduated high school during a pandemic, and I graduated college during rough economic times. And it's been difficult to get my footing with housing in the area. And there's a lot of other people here within my income range and income ranges higher than mine that are struggling with housing. So unfortunately, it's becoming a bigger issue than it has in previous years.
Well, we certainly appreciate the effort you've put into it. And I know that you have impressed a lot of folks recently when you've been presenting the results. One of the things we've talked about a lot was what are some of the impacts of having this lack of attainable housing. You touched on some of the types of employees here in the county that are not able to purchase housing or even find rentals. Can you elaborate a little bit on some of those groups and what you've discovered with their salaries versus what they can attain?
Yeah, the salaries for our central workforce here in St. Johns County are microscopic compared to the incomes that they need to afford housing within the area. Teachers, we have a high turnover rate with teachers in the area. We also have a significant amount of commuters within the area. We have over 115,000 people commuting in and out of St. Johns County for work every day, and that's 200,000 trips on our roads, and that's putting a strain on our infrastructure as well. So if we don't have teachers, our school system, which is known as the best in the state, is going to start to struggle as children are having more than one teacher within a semester. Hospitals, nurses, and being short-staffed on nurses. We got a little bit of that in COVID when you went to the hospital and you had longer wait times, and you were sitting there with people in critical need, and there just wasn't enough staff to fulfill that need. So unfortunately, especially as our healthcare industry and our school system is exploding with all of the people coming here, we're going to have to bring in even more of those employees, and we don't have the opportunities for them to live here because unfortunately the wages just don't match the housing available within the area.
You mentioned a very important item because one of the things we see a lot at the county commission meetings is people pushing back on, we have enough houses here, we have enough people, please don't build anything else. But you talked about the 115,000 trips in and out, right? And that would really help our infrastructure if we had more attainable housing here in the county. That might cut back on some of that traffic. Have you seen the numbers that would support that as you've been doing your research?
Oh, yeah, definitely. If we had more availability for affordable housing within the income ranges for our essential workforce, then we would be able to bring in the people that have left the county and already been priced out, and we'd also be willing to open these new positions to the new staff, and we can have the young people that are graduating be able to live here, and it would take the strain off our infrastructure. It would keep people here locally where they live, where they work, and it would overall increase the quality of life of St. Johns County as a whole.
Well, I love that you brought up it's the people who are already living here, because that's another thing we hear very often is we want to take care of the people who live here. Let's not build new houses for the people to move here, but we need to build housing that's attainable for the people who do live here, is what I have seen over the past 3 years. And I think that your updated research is supportive that that's not changed any in the 3 years we've worked on it. Right?
Yeah, while our population is growing, the population that's growing the most tends to be the more dependent population. So we need more workers to support the dependent population. And so if the people that are able to stay here and aren't the ones that are working here, then there's going to be an imbalance between the need and those that are able to provide the services.
You know, Aaliyah, knowing you're obviously in your 20s, recent grad, as you said, what are you hearing from your peers? I hear a lot of people in that age group, they have two jobs. Like I know so many school teachers that are working on the island at night, at restaurants and different things. Is that pretty common these days, I suppose?
Oh, yeah.
To make it work?
Yeah, everyone. I work two jobs.
Okay.
Yeah, I worked through college to support myself, and I work two jobs now, and most of my peers do as well, and those that don't are leaving for higher wage opportunities, or they're leaving because there's just nowhere for them to work here that pays enough for them to also live here. So there's just an imbalance between not only the job opportunities in the area, but also the availability of affordable housing for the jobs that are here.
You know, I actually just saw a recent article in the Wall Street Journal that it has become so common for young people to have two jobs.
Yeah,
That's
that was
just
what I
the
was
norm.
referencing. I saw the same thing, and that's what made me think, and there it is.
Right.
Ellie's doing it herself. You got to have the chamber pay her more, Scott. Come on.
Well, you know, that is what we hear a lot. Actually, somebody recently stood up at a commission meeting and said, yes, you know, there's a lack of housing, but you just need to pay these people more. So, you know, what does that really mean to pay them more? Because where does that come from?
No, that's right.
Our tax base, right? But we need to roll back the taxes and pay less taxes. Something doesn't balance out.
It's a conundrum for sure.
Yes. Strange thing to try and balance. In our report that we published, I know that we actually put forward some recommendations because we have followed the philosophy. We don't want to just throw the problem out there. We want to provide some solutions. What was the most interesting solution you think that we have put in the report that's out there?
I was really fascinated by the concept of community land trusts. That has been implemented in counties across the state of Florida, and it is a long-term affordability option. But community land trusts can't be effective without increase in density. And density isn't necessarily a bad word when it's used the right way. And for affordable housing to actually be implemented in the area, we need to be able to build more units on smaller plots of land so that we can have more people live within an area. And that doesn't mean we're making high rises within the area. We're just creating a place for people to live. It's not single family homes. It's not massive New York City buildings, but it's just an area where people can live. They can have their families without having to spend 70% of their income just paying their rent.
Now, I think that's a great point about the density, and I hope that people will take a look at our Attainable Housing Report and learn more about some of the recommendations. And I think that there's a lot to appeal to everybody in that. And we're going to continue at the Chamber to push with our commissioners and try and make some changes and improve things for our essential workers, our deputies, our teachers, our firefighters, the people we want to live right here in our community, and our tourism and hospitality people, because we want to keep those restaurants open, right?
Well, it's not something that's going to be fixed overnight, but I know the conversations are going on with the developers, trying to get them on board to figure out how to solve this issue. I know we've had some interesting people in just last week talking about kind of these communities where you can walk and live in the same environment. So, but congratulations to the Chamber, though, Aaliyah. You know, you'd be given an opportunity here to kind of jump into the deep end and be in charge of something with this report. And I think it's a great tell to say you're going to be fine. And believe me, we all started out of college with no money, so that's not a new phenomena. But it's the quicker you grab that ladder and climb it, you'll be out of that. So congratulations. And Beth, Tate, thank you so much for coming by and all the work that you do. Really helpful for the Chamber. We'll be right back for one more segment to talk about what's coming up in the next month at the Chamber.